The border crisis is no longer just about controlling migration. It is really a catastrophic attack on American sovereignty, fueled by corruption and the flow of lethal foreign chemicals. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're pulling the thread on one of the most drastic and frankly dangerous proposals in modern U.S. policy: the potential use of military force against the Mexican cartels. We've spent time analyzing presidential declarations, digging through declassified corruption files, and reviewing expert analysis of the battlefield to bring you the core facts. Our mission today is simple: to understand the true cost of inaction and the immense risks of intervention, so you walk away fully equipped to understand a threat that is rapidly being deemed, well, existential.
And we are already seeing this threat treated as a war waged directly on America. I mean, look at the rapid and dramatic escalation just since the beginning of this year. We know the U.S. government has designated 6 major Mexican cartels as what they call FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations.
Hold on, let's define that immediately. An FTO is a huge legal and political designation, right? That's not something they do lightly.
It is. It's very significant. Designating a group as a foreign terrorist organization is a legal status that essentially lets the government bypass traditional criminal justice procedures. And it opens the door to using significant national security assets, including the military, against them.
And the military is certainly there now. You mentioned the escalation started in January 2025. What specific assets are we seeing deployed? They aren't just sending standard Border Patrol resources anymore, are they?
Absolutely not. The sources indicate a full shift in posture, a real change. We are talking about active duty Army units, notably a Stryker Brigade combat team.
Stryker Brigade?
Yeah, alongside Navy destroyers. And these destroyers are armed with Tomahawk missiles. They were explicitly deployed, the sources say, to restore territorial integrity and prevent narco-trafficking.
A Stryker Brigade and Tomahawk destroyers. That sounds less like border security and more like preparation for an invasion of, well, a non-state actor.
Yeah.
What's the real political calculation behind deploying assets that drastic?
Well, the sourcing points to the deployment being a message, a very clear message that the U.S. is prepared to engage in highly targeted strikes. The political calculation is showing a resolve, showing strength. The implication of the Tomahawks is enormous. They are precision weapons, sure. But when you consider they were just recently used in the bombardment of Houthi targets overseas, well, their presence here sets a very serious precedent.
It certainly does. And this intent was seemingly confirmed in August 2025, when the president reportedly directed the Pentagon to prepare specific options for the use of military force against these groups. This shift confirms the U.S. government views this crisis not as just a complex law enforcement problem, but as an acute threat demanding a military-level response.
Exactly. And this is where we need to start framing the severity of the crisis using, objective statistics. The American drug crisis, fueled by what flows across that border, is now a catastrophe. It really is.
The numbers are truly difficult to comprehend. Drug overdose has officially become the leading cause of injury death in the United States. Just think about that comparison for a second. It has surpassed both motor vehicle accidents and deaths caused by shootings. That staggering preventable death toll is a direct, measurable consequence of the illicit narcotics flooding in. It is a drain on American society that just cannot be ignored.
And the response from the White House seems to reflect this severity. The presidential proclamation explicitly labels the situation an invasion. And, when you look at the economics, it becomes clear why that language is being used.
Yeah, it is definitely not hyperbole when the sources reveal the true extent of cartel control down there.
No, the cartels exert a level of control that directly threatens U.S. sovereignty. They control vast territory south of the border and effectively dictate who can and cannot travel to the United States from Mexico. That's incredible power. And this control generates massive, almost governmental-level profits. And it's not just from drugs. Cartel profits from human smuggling alone had a jaw-dropping $13 billion in 2021.
$13 billion
Yeah.
just from human smuggling.
Exactly. This is organized crime achieving the scale and financial power of a parallel government right on our doorstep.
This shift from local crime to existential national threat only intensifies when you bring in the geopolitical actors who are, well, taking advantage of this chaos. This is where it gets really important to understand the global implications, I think.
Oh, definitely. The sourcing clearly connects the chaos at the border to global security risks. We know, for example, that China has been caught shipping fentanyl precursor chemicals directly to Mexico.
Right, those precursors.
These chemicals are undoubtedly intended to be manufactured into poison designed to kill the U.S. population. I mean, Let's be blunt. This means a major global adversary is actively participating in the supply chain of America's leading cause of injury death.
And it goes beyond simply fentanyl, too.
Absolutely. We have documented cases involving Iranian operatives, specifically members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force. They've been charged with plotting terrorist attacks in the U.S.
How? By using the cartels.
Yes, by attempting to enlist Mexican cartel members for murder-for-hire schemes. So when foreign terrorist organizations are actively trying to leverage Mexican criminal groups against Americans, this clearly crosses the line from a drug problem to a direct national security crisis.
Which brings us, I suppose, to the core issue. Why has a threat this massive been allowed to mature for so long? The sources point straight back to systemic failure, and specifically the absolute betrayal of trust within the Mexican government that undermined years and years of partnership.
Right. We poured resources into addressing this problem through international cooperation efforts like the Merida Initiative. Remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. Big program.
Huge. It ran from 2008 to 2021, involving $3.5 billion in U.S. funding. And crucially, the goal of Merida was to fund everything from police training to judicial reform, essentially, building the capacity for Mexico to police and govern itself.
And if the goal was to build capacity, the result was a catastrophic failure, because that $3.5 billion investment was just completely undermined by deep-rooted, pervasive corruption. The treachery, according to court records we looked at, ran straight to the highest levels.
The evidence is staggering. Just look at Mexico's former Secretary of Public Security, Genaro Garcia Luna. This is the man in charge of federal law enforcement for the entire country.
Okay.
He was convicted in the U.S. for working directly for the Sinaloa cartel. He accepted massive bribes and was feeding sensitive U.S. intelligence directly to them. I mean, during the trial, a cartel leader stated flatly that the cartel doesn't function without the government's help.
Doesn't function without government help. That says it all.
It really does. The corruption was the entire foundation of the problem.
And that institutional rot isn't new either, is it? You see the same pattern of treachery stretching back decades, impacting American agents directly.
Oh, absolutely. The brutal 1980s murder of DEA agent Kiki Camarena is the ultimate historical anecdote here. It's horrific. He was kidnapped, tortured, and beaten for over 30 hours, sustaining injuries so terrible his skull was fractured like an eggshell.
Unbelievable.
And what's critical is that trial testimony placed a high-ranking Mexican official, Manuel Bartlett Diaz, who was then Secretary of the Interior, at the scene of the torture.
He was there.
According to the testimony, yes. And it's staggering to think the man implicated in that horrific betrayal is still serving in President López Obrador's cabinet today. That speaks volumes about the historical institutional acceptance of criminality that, seems to define the relationship.
And if that institutional history is true, the U.S. response, well, it seems dangerously lax in retrospect. We were essentially giving away military equipment with almost no supervision.
Yeah, our sources confirm that U.S. oversight was completely compromised during the Merida Initiative. The U.S. government settled for physically inspecting a mere 10% of the equipment it donated to Mexico back in 2011.
Only 10%.
10%. Imagine giving away billions in sophisticated gear and only checking 1 in 10 items. It was a massive $3.5 billion leaky bucket.
Given that level of negligence and corruption at the highest levels, I can definitely understand why U.S. agents operating on the ground couldn't trust their local counterparts. You wouldn't know who to trust.
They didn't. Plain and simple. Embedded U.S. law enforcement agents openly stated they feared using local police assistance due to the fear of corruption, preferring instead to work only with trusted, vetted units like the Mexican Marines.
Like in the El Chapo hunt.
Exactly. To execute critical operations, like the 2014 hunt for El Chapo. The evidence shows the security partnership was just corroded from the inside out.
So if the partnership is fundamentally broken by corruption, then it makes sense why the debate has shifted entirely to unilateral military intervention. Although some critics argue that military action is futile because, the U.S. demand for drugs is the root problem, essentially arguing the problem is one of American culture.
The sources strongly push back against that blame America narrative. The argument in favor of intervention highlights the moral distinction between the consumer and the criminal enterprise. The material explicitly argues that attacking the cartels is necessary to prevent them from going harm in the future, regardless of U.S. consumption patterns. It's simply not fair, the argument goes, to blame the U.S. consumer for the extreme violence, murder, and political destabilization committed by cartel perpetrators.
Right. The actions of the cartels are distinct.
Exactly. If the cartels are murdering innocent people and poisoning our children, action must be taken against the source of that violence. That's the core argument.
Okay, so if the president chooses the military option, which appears increasingly likely, what precisely is on the table beyond the threat of those destroyer strikes we mentioned?
Well, the U.S. has a spectrum of options. These range from unilateral action, acting alone, to seeking joint operations with highly trusted Mexican military units, those few units they can trust. The operational plan includes precisely what those deployed Navy destroyers are capable of, targeted strikes, using those Tomahawk missiles, for instance, to destroy high-value infrastructure like fentanyl labs, pill mills, and also to eliminate high-value drug lords. The goal is decapitation, basically. Decapitate the network and destroy the physical infrastructure where these lethal chemicals are processed.
But military action on a friendly nation's soil, even against non-state actors like these, it comes with immense risk. How seriously is the Pentagon taking the danger of intervention? Because a $130 billion annual hit to the U.S. economy, that sounds like a bigger danger than almost any military engagement.
Oh, the risks are profound, and the sources list them clearly. First, there is the cartel counteraction. You have to expect that. Cartels are sophisticated, unpredictable, non-state actors who will undoubtedly exploit U.S. vulnerabilities if attacked directly. And consider the economic risk you just mentioned. A border closure, maybe in response to military action, could cost the U.S. economy a massive $130 billion a year and jeopardize almost 1 million U.S. jobs. That economic fallout could be instantaneous and devastating.
And the cartels could easily pivot to targeting U.S. civilians, couldn't they?
Precisely. They could target the 1.6 million U.S. citizens living in Mexico or the 37 million U.S. citizens who travel there annually as tourists. That's a huge potential hostage pool, essentially. Second, we face a massive risk of civilian casualties. This is unavoidable, really. Cartel members are deeply embedded within civilian populations in major cities like Juarez and Tijuana.
Right next door.
Yeah. Military action against these embedded combatants, especially using things like missile strikes, could lead to mass violence, create refugee crises, and destabilize Mexico's northern states entirely. And that's fundamentally not in the U.S. interests.
So this deep dive really confirms that the threat emanating from south of the border is far beyond a simple criminal enterprise. It's something else entirely.
It is existential. I think that's the right word. We've seen decades of U.S. cooperation and billions of dollars compromised by deep-seated state corruption, proving that partnership right now is currently ineffective. The cartels' mass profits, their extreme violence, and their ability to penetrate state institutions confirm we are facing a near narco state right on our border. This isn't just about drugs anymore. It's about a foreign power structure capable of waging war on our nation and directly threatening the lives of our citizens.
We've spent decades focused overwhelmingly on fighting the supply side of this problem, from the Merit Initiative to these current military intervention attempts. Yet, history offers a dire warning here, doesn't it? Historically, when countries focus too much on halting a foreign drug supply and fail to control the demand at home, the consequences are catastrophic regardless of military action.
That's a crucial point. Think back to the cautionary tale of the Opium Wars in 19th century China. The Chinese fought and lost 2 wars trying desperately to halt the import of opium from the British. By the end of the century, an estimated 40 million people, that's about 10% of China's population at the time, were addicts. And this contributed directly to the nation's social, economic, and political decline, the century of humiliation.
So for the U.S., facing both a highly sophisticated, corrupt, and compromised partner south of the border and a domestic addiction crisis that already claims hundreds of thousands of lives annually, the question remains, how can we truly win this fight if the demand persists so strongly at home and our primary partners are inherently compromised institutions? That is the dangerous equation America faces today.